know some counselors are going to be arriving. We have 2 counselors joining us remotely this evening. We also, counselors Freeman and McGee will be joining us remotely, so they're on Zoom right now, and we'll have other counselors joining as in a little bit, but we do have a quorum, and we do have some other business to attend to before we get to the mask mandate issue. That was a previously scheduled public informational hearing regarding the 2 items that are on the special election, the special election ballot for December 7th. So what we'll do is we'll just delve into those items first. It's really just providing just a basic explanation of what those items are. And we have folks who have worked on both of those issues here with us this evening to just share with us just some basic information about what is included in those bond items. So, but before we get into that, we do need to adopt our agenda. So may I please have a motion on the agenda?
I would move to adopt the agenda.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Jang. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go do a vote. All those in favor of our agenda, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? That carries unanimously, and we have our agenda. Brings us to the 2 public questions. The first of which is approval of general obligation bonds for city capital projects. We'll have Martha Keenan come up and present and share some information on what all is being asked of voters in that question. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate to be here this evening. The general obligation bond is a request for $40 million to continue the 10-year capital plan, which we have just finished the first 5 years. These funds will be used to leverage our opportunities with both the American Rescue Plan and the federal infrastructure bill. And then it also allows us to address areas that are not covered under those opportunities, such as facilities, fleet, parks, and IT. In particular, we have 3 fire trucks that are on this bond vote, and we have our public safety infrastructure, which is at end of life and is approximately $4.3 million. Overall, the city has, for their general fund assets, they have a need of over $150 million. This $40 million bond is just 25% of that need, and we are looking at covering the balance through these other opportunities. 10 million of this bond will go towards looking at a solution for Memorial Auditorium, and the other will be balanced through different parts of our assets. So some of it will go in, as the infrastructure bill was just signed, and we don't know how it's going to play out. We do have funding in here for next summer's sidewalks and streets work. There is money for IT. There is for intersection improvements and bike infrastructure. An important part of this is that in order to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming our way, we need to have a local match in order to leverage for those dollars. And so this will provide that opportunity for us. There's money in here to provide that local match. It will go towards bridges and project management, our facilities, which have a lot of deferred maintenance, parks, and memorial. So happy to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Are there any comments or questions from counselors? And I'll just note that Councilor Paul has also joined us remotely. Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate that presentation. We will now move into the next section, which is, or the next item, which is the revenue bond from Burlington Electric, and we'll have Darren Springer come up and share some information about what's included in that bond. Welcome.
Good evening. Darren Springer, General Manager with Burlington Electric, here to talk about the Net Zero Energy Revenue Bond. The Net Zero Energy Revenue Bond is a $20 million proposal that would significantly invest in reliability of our electric system and also in advancing our climate progress as a community towards our net zero energy goal. Our net zero energy goal is to, by 2030, reduce and eventually eliminate fossil fuels in the transportation and the thermal sectors. We're already making progress towards that through a variety of programs and incentives and policies, including some that the council has advanced related to buildings. And the revenue bond would invest in 4 key areas. First being the electric grid. We would have a $7 million investment focused primarily on reliability. On average, our customers see typically 1 outage per year, and typically the duration is an hour or less, which is a really strong reliability metric. When we survey our customers, they always tell us that reliability is a top priority. And so we want to continue to invest in our grid and keeping it reliable for our customers. In addition, we would invest another $5.3 million in the grid in order to accommodate new electric uses, things like electric vehicles, heat pumps, all the different programs that we have to support reducing fossil fuel use and switching to electric. We would begin to make grid upgrades to accommodate some of those new uses. We also would invest through the revenue bond $3.9 million in technology systems. We have aging and in many cases end-of-life technology systems for financial and customer and meter data management. We're in the process of replacing those systems, and the revenue bond would support that effort. We also would invest $2.2 million in our electric generating facilities, in maintenance of our electric generating facilities, including converting our gas turbine, which runs on oil and is a peaker plant that runs very rarely, converting that over to biodiesel so it would run on renewable fuel. And then lastly, we would make a capital investment in a variety of net zero energy technologies, particularly new EV charging around the community. We certainly want to support Burlington residents who need charging and also bring in travelers who are moving through Burlington to stop here and come shop and eat and spend in our community. And if we have charging, we can attract more businesses and tourists and others who might be coming through to use the charging. And we also would be making an investment in our infrastructure as well. We have an electric bucket truck that's planned as part of that. So those are the investments through the revenue bond. I would mention that we recently had our A3 rating from Moody's affirmed on our outstanding revenue bonds, which is a welcome development as we pursue this proposal. Will help keep our interest rates for the proposal low. We also have shared with the community that investing in the revenue bond actually helps lower near-term rate pressure, and over the long term, there is revenue return from the proposal that would help to pay for the debt service on the revenue bond, in addition to a maturity on an existing revenue bond capacity from which we can put towards repayment of this new revenue bond. So over the long term, there's very minimal rate pressure from this proposal. It helps us advance our progress, and it also frees up liquidity so we can invest in further incentives for our customers. We've had a number of popular programs for heat pumps and EVs and electric lawnmowers, electric bikes, and through this proposal, we'll be able to support a continuation of strong incentives for our customers and help further reduce emissions. Glad to answer any questions.
Okay, great. Are there any councilor questions or comments? Okay, not seeing any. Are there any questions from members of the public on either of these questions? Steve, yeah, would you just approach the mic, please? And yeah, if you could just move off to the side, we'll see which one of you he has questions for.
Some of my questions will be for him. You've got 2 items. I think it'd be fair if I could address both of them, but not
sure,
at the same time.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, and if you could just ask all your questions at once, and then we can have the either Darren or Martha come up and answer your questions.
I'm Steve Goodkind. I live in the New North End. Used to be the Public Works Director and City Engineer. As far as the BED bond is concerned, it's not so much trouble what's in it. The system has to be improved. We want to do more in the way of energy conservation programs. But the one thing that's missing, and it's like the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room, this proposal does nothing to get rid of the McNeil plant. The McNeil plant, and I think you all know this, wood-burning plant, not built to fight climate change, built to fight against the Arab oil embargoes. Wood and coal, whether you call them renewable or fossil fuels or whatever you want to call them, it's the same. For a pound or a calorie of energy created, whether you burn wood or coal, the CO2 footprint is the same. But it gets worse from there. When you take wood and you harvest wood, you remove one of the few things we have going for us to remove CO2 from the atmosphere over the next 20 or 30 years. So you're not only harvesting the wood and burning it, creating CO2, you're taking away what might help us fight in the next 20 or 30 years, because that's what's important now. Not 100 years, not 200 years, 30 years. You're taking that away. But on top of it all, the McNeil plant, as a wood-burning energy plant, generating electricity, is 27% efficient. That's worse than any car, probably worse than the leaf blowers you banned, worse than anything. So it's a trifecta. And to let this bond go forward and not take the opportunity now to say, let's make plans to close McNeil, let's phase it out. In fact, this bond, and the superintendent talked about it, they're going to sell more power from McNeil. That's what the future is. They're not closing it up, they're not phasing it out. They're going to keep our rates stable by selling power from McNeil. McNeil is filthy. Not just dirty, it's filthy. The CO2 from McNeil is 400 to 500,000 tons of CO2 per year. The proposal before you takes out 47,000 tons over the life of the project. I don't know what the life of the project is, but that's pittance. That's pittance. And to let this bond go forward without some commitment that McNeil will be closed, phased out, maybe temporarily turned to natural gas, which I think can be done with a flick of a switch. We're kidding everybody, and not just kidding them.
Is there a question in here?
I would like to know what this project does for McNeil.
Okay, thank you for that.
How does it make McNeil not be the polluter that it is?
Okay, thank you for that. And then what was your other question
I'd like to keep the issues separate. I've got some questions about the capital bonds, but I'll wait.
Okay, fair.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about McNeil. So the McNeil plant is a renewable energy plant, and it's the data does not support the idea that it is a similar carbon profile to a fossil fuel plant, primarily because with biomass, you have to look at the life cycle of emissions. There is a sustainability component to harvesting that is missing from the analysis that was presented. That said, the McNeil plant is not a part of the revenue bond proposal. It is an important facility for us, and we are pursuing a district energy project that would improve the efficiency of the plant, but also provide a reduction in fossil fuel use in the community for thermal sector. But what I would say is that we've had some third-party analysis done to look at the question of McNeil harvesting, and we have 4 foresters on staff who spend their time focusing on sustainable forestry practices at McNeil. The areas where we have wood supply in Vermont, upstate New York, have actually added forest cover and carbon sequestration during the period of time that we've been harvesting. So there is a sustainability component here. Certainly if you were clear-cutting forests, not regrowing, and using that for energy, that would have a negative implication from a climate standpoint. On the other hand, McNeil primarily uses wood residue that would otherwise be left over from logging operations, is able to utilize that for energy, and is able to support a sustainable land management for the forests that we harvest from. So I would differ with the assertion that it's a negative from a carbon standpoint. I would certainly differ that it is worse than natural gas. I think having McNeil as a renewable resource is far preferable to burning more natural gas in New England. The marginal fuel in the wintertime is natural gas. If you shut McNeil, you burn more natural gas on the regional grid. I think we need more renewables on the regional grid, not less, and so we're certainly supportive of continuing McNeil as part of a portfolio of resources within the electric sector.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Were there any other questions on the revenue bond, so the BED revenue bond? Any folks participating remotely with questions specifically on the revenue bond? We'll get into public forum on the mask mandate separately from this. This is just in the public informational hearing. So you can indicate interest in asking a question by using the raise hand function. Okay, not seeing any interest there, so we'll close that down and go into the other questions on the general obligation bond having to do with capital investments. Steve, did you want to come and ask your other question? And then we'll go to in-person questions on those. And again, just if you could keep any statements at the front end brief and get your question so that we can.
This is truly more questions. Like when I'm looking at the spreadsheet for the last 10-year capital plan, which is 5 years ago, and you look at the one for this time, it's very unclear whether we're doing a whole new set of projects or completing projects that didn't get completed with the monies from the first bond. And it's not even clear what happened to the money from the first 10-year plan, which was 5 years ago. So I'm just wondering if they can explain that what are we voting for? Are we voting for the same program that didn't get finished? Something like sidewalks is an example, or Southern Connector is an example. The money was voted. What happened to that money? And is this new money funding something different, or are we funding things that didn't get done, or is money moved around and some things didn't get funded last time and now we're funding them? It's pretty confusing when you try and make sense of it. So if someone could answer that, it'd be great.
Okay, thank you for that question. Okay. Martha, would you be able to come back and answer that question, please?
Great questions, thank you. So on the sidewalks and the streets, we have a lot of deferred maintenance and we are still addressing it. So we found that our sustainable level of work for sidewalks and streets is higher than we have annual funding for. So this bond is paying for the sustainable level of work done on streets and sidewalks. The bike path was one of the major projects in the past 5 years. It is complete this year with the exception of the North Beach Overpass Bridge. And the North Beach Overpass Bridge was not in the design for the original rehabilitation. So it is an addition to the plan, not something that didn't get completed. We continue to have major deferred maintenance on all of our facilities. We have done major renovations on this building, on 645 Pine. But just like our streets, the potholes never go away. The maintenance never goes away on buildings. So we continue to have more work to do. We have a lot of historic buildings, and those cost more money to do. So we have those. In addition, we have evolved our plan, and we now include the public infrastructure. So the police and fire radio system was not in the original plan, and that is a large part of this. It's $4.3 million. As in last time, we had fire trucks. Fire trucks age. They are now older, and we need to get 3 more. And so likely we will be every 3 or 5 years looking at replacing more fire trucks. That is an ongoing need as they age. So these are new projects, they're continuing projects, and we're just trying to continue to address deferred maintenance and get to a proactive state on all of our capital.
If you could just please come to the mic and ask that.
Come on up, Steve.
Is the 10-year plan from 5 years ago, was that done though? I'm not clear on that, or is that still going on?
So it was the first 5 years that we got funded. So we only funded the first 5 years of the 10-year plan, and we are 5 years in. So we are now working on the second 5 years. And all of the capital plan is an evolution and a revolving thing so that there continues to be new projects and new repairs that need to be done on an ongoing basis. So we are doing it as a revolving program.
What we're calling 10-year plans are really 5-year plans, is that?
So yes, so when we
Where my difficulty is.
So when we funded the $27.5 million, it was stated it was for 5 years.
Okay.
So, but we proposed and showed to the public a 10-year, but said we could only fund the first 5 years.
Is this one a 10 or a 5?
This is actually a 3-year, because as we learned through our knowledge and doing this, is that you can predict well for 3 years. 5 years is really hard to predict because those last 2 years many things change
Sure.
in that time period. So we're trying to be more realistic and responsible by doing a 3-year plan.
Okay, so we don't have 10-year plans. This is a 3-year plan that we're voting on.
And it will continue to evolve and revolve at 3 years.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on the general obligation bond from folks who are here in person? Okay, seeing none, I'll open that up to folks who are participating remotely. If you are attending remotely, you can indicate your interest in asking a question about the general obligation bond just by using the raise hand function at the bottom. Anybody interested in asking a question? I'll recognize you. Okay. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that item as well. Just want to thank both of our presenters this evening for sharing that helpful information with voters. And I just want to encourage folks to get their ballots in. If you have had any issues with your ballots in terms of receiving them, please be in touch with the city clerk's office in order to sort those out. You can also take your ballots into your polling place on I almost said town meeting day, on December 7th, which is when the special election will be held. And polls will be open normal hours, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. As we do in elections. So you can vote in, bring your ballots in person at that time as well. So you have a little bit of time here to get those ballots still in, but just encourage people to please weigh in on these important questions that are before you. So having completed the 2 items on this particular meeting, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
We have a motion seconded by Councilor Jang. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that is unanimous, and we are adjourned with our first meeting, which was that informational hearing. We'll now move directly into our next meeting, which is the special city council meeting regarding the masking ordinance. So I will call that meeting to order at 5:28 p.m. And the first item on the agenda for this meeting is the agenda. So I have, is there a motion on the agenda?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion on the agenda. Is there a second? Councilor Barlow seconds. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously, and we now have our agenda. Brings us to item number 2, which is our public forum this evening. So as we've done in the past couple of meetings here, we're going to be offering the opportunity for folks to comment both in person as well as remotely. We'll go ahead but one of the things that is a little bit of a quirk in the way that we do things is that we do prioritize Burlington residents first, both in terms of in-person commenters and remote commenters. So what we'll be doing is having in-person commenters who are from Burlington commenting. So we encourage folks to indicate on your sheets if you are a Burlington resident. And those sheets are available over in the corner here. So if you are interested in speaking this evening, you may sign up for public forum by completing one of those sheets and then handing them over to the clerk's table over here. And we'll be happy to, and they'll get those forms over to me. We will, if you are, however, participating remotely, the way for you to sign up is to go to burlingtonvt.gov/citycouncil, which is one word, /public forum, again, one word. And that'll take you to an online form that then feeds into a Google sheet that I then use to call on the folks who are participating remotely. So I'll enable your mic when it's your turn remotely. And so that's, again, burlingtonvt.gov/citycouncil/public forum. So if you're interested in signing up to comment in person, just go over here and then give your comments to the clerk's table. We do encourage folks in the setting to wear masks, so please wear masks this evening. The other piece is also that in terms of the comments themselves, please direct all comments through the the chair, so it's not a time to engage in personal attacks. Please stay focused on the issue at hand, which is the mask mandate and the policy that's being proposed. It's not, again, not a time for personal attacks. Please also don't use profanity in any of your speaking. And we'll give folks 2 minutes this evening. You have the clock right back here, and then there's also a light system with green indicating you have plenty of time left, yellow signaling you're getting closer, and then reds saying that your time is up. Once your time is up, I will ask you to please wrap up. So please keep your comments to 2 minutes this evening. Really appreciate it if folks can just stay to that time frame tonight, and let's hopefully have a productive conversation about this proposed masking ordinance. So we'll go ahead and get started first with the folks who are in person. So I have Christopher Aaron Felker to be followed by Amy Stevenson. Yes. And if folks can just please speak right into the mics, just because we want to make sure that we can pick it up for folks who are participating remotely, and so that folks here in person can hear it as well.
Will I be permitted to read this entire statement as my request prior?
No, you're given 2 minutes just like everyone else.
Would you be, I'm amenable, I'll stay around if you'd like to, I can read it during the debate portion if you'd like to take testimony from another major political party that isn't represented in this room but is in this state.
So no, I'm going to only give you 2 minutes like everyone else.
Sure. I'm Christopher Aaron Felker, the chairman of the Burlington Republican Party, and I'm here tonight to speak in opposition to the Weinberger administration's proposed municipal mask mandate ordinance presented as item 3.01 on tonight's agenda. We agreed to comply with mask mandates this past year due to the fact that COVID-19 is a novel virus, and at the time there were no vaccines approved nor available to the public and no recognized treatments to this virus. This is not where we find ourselves as a city today. Today, Vermont, Chittenden County, and Burlington are positioned as one of the most vaccinated states, counties, and cities in the entire United States. We have abundant access to testing and treatments to cope with any potential infections for COVID-19. As we continue as a city to navigate through the worst pandemic to strike the globe in 100 years, it's important to note that our community has effectively reached the endemic stage of this, and as such, we should be encouraging individuals to assume personal responsibility for their own health choices while guaranteeing our city's promise to promote a culture of open access and accessibility for all who live, work, and visit our fine city. There is no such thing as collective liberty. All liberty is individual liberty. As such, I have and am willing to continue to advocate for individuals' rights to exercise their rights to wear a mask just as much as I am going to exercise my right to advocate for them to not wear one. The governor is on record stating that these are unnecessary, and the entire GOP caucus in the House and Senate here in Vermont are opposed to these unwarranted and unnecessary powers. Municipal mask mandates negatively impact our business community. Over the last 18 to 20 months, we have seen that mask mandates harm businesses and result in more people shopping at online retailers. We have also seen mask mandates decrease overall number of people who are comfortable patronizing our local restaurants. Our businesses are already battling labor shortages and staffing shortages, and unnecessary overregulation will only contribute to more labor shortages. The Vermont Republican Party has expressed unified written opposition to so-called vaccine passports as an affront to our civil liberties. And I am in complete agreement with these elective effectively create an unacceptable and truly untenable second class of citizen. I'm getting there.
Can you please
The
wrap up?
administration pushed to grant mask
Again,
mandates
your-
waivers for
your
all
time is up.
businesses who utilize vaccine passports, codified into
Your time is
law.
up. Can you please
A precedent
finish?
that businesses have the right to deny an area of public accommodation
Can you
to
please
anyone
finish?
not willing to surrender their medical history. Furthermore,
please finish?
the administration's push to endorse reckless intrusions is not based
Are you
upon
able to-
sound
can you please
science,
wrap
as
up?
it fails completely to recognize the literally millions of
please wrap
Americans who have already achieved natural immunity from battling COVID
Can you
and
please wrap up?
recovering. Municipal mask mandates are
you please wrap up?
unenforceable mask theater and only serve to undermine our messaging efforts that efficacy of
please wrap up?
vaccines to fight and limit the negative impacts of
Can you please
COVID-19
wrap up?
in our society. I am amenable to
Please wrap
revisiting
up.
this issue in the future if and when these three
Can you
criteria
please
are
wrap
met.
up?
The governor declares a state of emergency.
Please
UVM
wrap
Medical
up.
Health Center issues a statement of medical urgency and
Your
necessity.
time is up.
The National Guard begins
I was
rebuilding that
clear about how much
emergency
time
field
you would
hospital.
have, and your time is up.
While a Yankee will do all you ask of him, he will do nothing that you demand.
Your time
and as
is up.
such, on behalf of my party, the residents and visitors to the city of Burlington, I respectfully request that this council
time is
reject this proposed municipal
wrap
mask
up.
mandate ordinance and its associated
Please, no
draconian
applause.
passports
Please, no applause.
presented by this
Please, no
administration
applause.
to the council this evening
Please,
as
no applause.
unnecessary and incongruent with
Please,
the
no
principles
applause.
of liberty that our nation
Please,
holds
no
dear.
applause.
Thank you, and God bless America.
Please, no applause. Our next speaker will be Amy Stevenson, to be followed by Jennifer Moore. And again, if folks could please stay to the 2 minutes. And again, we don't, it's helpful if folks do not clap. We're trying to create an environment where folks feel comfortable sharing their opinion. So if we have a mentality where people of differing viewpoints feel like they're being cheered or jeered, please just allow the speaker to speak and then let us move on to the next speaker. If you could please go ahead.
First of all, thank you for having a public forum and for serving on City Council. My name is Amy Stevenson. I have a doctorate in microbiology and molecular genetics from the University of Vermont. Despite real-world evidence from the past 20 months supporting the futility of masks and stopping the transmission of the airborne SARS-CoV-2 virus, scared Vermonters feel they have to do something and cling to the mask mandates. The proposed mask rule in Burlington is even more insidious, though, because it applies only to the unvaccinated and it exempts persons entering public buildings who show proof of COVID-19 vaccination, or what is commonly referred to as vaccine passports. As you should know, if you follow the science, vaccinated individuals can get and transmit SARS-CoV-2. The current COVID-19 vaccines have also been shown to provide waning immune protection that disappears within months of becoming fully vaccinated. Hence the requirement for boosters. In the UK and Israel, which are open with their data and tracking vaccinated versus unvaccinated, cases in the vaccinated are now outnumbering cases in the unvaccinated in most age groups. Hospitalizations and deaths are also rising daily among the vaccinated, an indication that the vaccines do not provide lasting protection from severe outcomes. Given these facts, to privilege the vaccinated only as exempt from the mask mandate is both nonsensical and blatant discrimination against the unvaccinated. This is especially true for those individuals who have had COVID and been shown to have lasting and robust natural immunity that stops transmission of the virus and is now confirmed by over 100 scientific studies. This type of discrimination is deplorable and only serves to divide our already fractured community. The City Council needs to think long and hard on whether they want to be the ones who are personally responsible for manifesting discriminatory practices that divide Burlington residents and create a two-tiered society of medical apartheid. It needs to stop here. Say no to the mask mandate that will have no impact on endemic spread of COVID, but will most definitely turn neighbor against
Your time is
neighbor
up.
and divide our already fragile community. Thank you.
Please, no applause. Please, no applause. Our next speaker is Jennifer Moore, to be followed by Jennifer Hume.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Moore. I live in the New North End in Ward 7. Hi, Mark. Hi, Ali. Thanks for having me tonight. I'm sorry the governor has failed in his responsibility to protect Public Health and has pushed this decision onto you. I know you're not public health experts, but I know that you're smart and you care about your communities, or you would not be here tonight. I'm speaking in favor of a mask mandate. Cases in Vermont are higher than ever. Hospitalizations are higher than ever. Our ICUs are almost full. The University of Vermont Medical Center is canceling non-urgent surgeries and has asked FEMA for help to handle capacity in our hospitals. Before the Thanksgiving break, IAA had to completely close because of COVID cases in the school. I have 2 children in Burlington schools, and my husband teaches at CP Smith. My husband has been a close contact of COVID cases 4 times already this school year. We are fully vaccinated, but there is still risk. Vaccinated people transmit and catch COVID. I looked today at the Department of Health website. There have been 7,600 breakthrough cases of COVID in Vermont, 202 hospitalizations, and 85 breakthrough COVID deaths, just in the state of Vermont. We have a high vaccination rate, and that's fantastic, but it's clear we need multi-layered mitigation strategies during this surge. We're entering winter when most people are going to spend most of their time inside. And if we do not protect ourselves and our communities right now, then we are failing. This is an opportunity for the City Council and for the Mayor to do what is best and to protect our Burlington residents, to keep our schools open, to keep parents able to go to work. I'm horrified by the people behind me that are cheering and wishing for people to be sick. And I'm just going to say that, Max, because I'm not...
Please just stay focused on the issues.
You know, it's really horrifying.
Please stay focused on the issues.
The issue is that we do need to care for each other. That this is not about me, and this is not about you and whether you're vaccinated or not. This is about making sure that we're taking care of our community. And the way that we can do that is to protect
You could please wrap up.
each other. And
Can you please wrap up?
Please issue a mask mandate. It's really
Again,
critical.
can you please wrap up?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next speaker is Jennifer Hume, to be followed by Monica Brager.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Hume. I'm a Burlington resident. Masks do not work. They may provide some protection in some cases when used properly. They do not work at all when you walk into the coffee shop or the bar wearing the mask and then remove it once seated. There are no studies that can support the argument that everyone wearing a mask will prevent or would have prevented the tragic loss of life that we saw during this pandemic. Although the methods of determining whether a death is actually due to COVID or not are highly questionable, if we take the current number of 800,000 US COVID deaths, we have to admit we failed, assuming our goal was to prevent deaths. The goal seemed to be a moving target at times, right? We could have saved most of those lives if politicians and bureaucrats had implemented effective measures and policies that were directed at individuals who requested protection, while leaving the rest of us free to exercise our inherent right to bodily autonomy, to expose ourselves and our children to dirt and disease as we see fit, to strengthen our bodies and our immune systems through immersion in germy activities that bring us joy. Denying human contact and fresh air to children and the elderly is abuse. There's no way around it. Vermont politicians and bureaucrats are guilty of child abuse and abuse of the elderly and other vulnerable groups. And I say this because I love and care about our children, not because I want to attack anyone individually. If we want to prevent more COVID deaths, all Vermonters who wish for the highest level of protection should be given that. You wearing a mask while ordering your beer and then taking it off while you drink the beer with your Tinder date is not going to prevent someone in fragile health from contracting COVID. No children should have to suffer 8 hours a day of oxygen deprivation in hopes that they might prevent someone from getting COVID. The science doesn't support it, and basic human decency calls for protection to be given to all of those who request it 100%. There are many well thought out and compassionate ways to protect those who want protection to the highest level. Mask mandates will only create further division in an already deeply divided community.
Please wrap up.
We are all highly intelligent, compassionate, critical thinkers who value the collective health of the community. I believe the collective health can coexist with individual freedom and bodily autonomy. I fear that oppressive, unscientific measures like masking and vaccinating children and mask mandates will further erode all of our trust in our elected officials and create situations where we are no longer able to work together for the common good.
Please wrap up. Your time is up. Again, no applause, please. No applause, please. Can you please respect the request for no applause? I'm trying to get through the speakers and move people along. Please respect that request. Monica Brager is our next speaker, to be followed by Mike Gonzalez.
Hi, my name is Monica, and I live in the Old North End, and I'm opposed to mask mandates. There have been 52 studies, all available on the NIH's website, that find that ordinary masking does not reduce viral infection rates. Dr. Fauci in March 2020 observed that a mask's only real efficacy may be in making people feel a little better. So wearing masks is not science. There have been no studies that prove that masks stop the prevention and the spread of a viral infection. Science also shows us that vaccination does not prevent infection, and has been showed in numerous studies that the rate of infection by vaccinated and unvaccinated has not been shown to be different. So punishing people based on medical autonomy is a method of control and punishment, not of public health. I feel people should have the individual right. If you feel comfortable and safer wearing a mask, please do. If you feel sick or unwell, please stay home. But people should not have to wear a mask if they do not need a mask. If I'm healthy, I should not have to wear a mask to go into a store to shop. If I'm sick, I should stay home. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mike Gonzalez.
Hello there. I live across the street at 125 St. Paul Street in Burlington, and I'm opposed to mask mandates. Just speaking as your neighbor, I've lived here my entire life, 32 years old, and what I see coming is, first it's just a mask mandate. It's like, yeah, put your mask on. It's not that hard. I get it. People do it. But in the bigger scheme of things, what I see next is once we allow a mask mandate, and don't get me wrong, this is a medical device. You're using it for a medical reason. And OSHA hasn't completed any studies on the safety of masks. And there's been studies, the largest in Denmark, proving masks just don't work. And the size of the virus is much smaller. You can take a piece of your hair and put it through your mask, and your piece of hair is 40 times bigger than the virus. And so, but anyway, in the grand scheme of things, you let this mask mandate go through. What's next? It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. We're at the most cases per day than we've ever been. But so once this mask doesn't work, what's next is, well, we got to mandate vaccines. And that's where we're headed. And as an American, I never thought we'd get to this point. And it scares me. It scares me. I'm part of the recovery community. I never even thought I would be here today, except I see what's coming. I see what's coming down the pipeline. I see what's going on in Australia. And I see it happening here. They just rounded up Aboriginal communities for not acquiescing to mandates. And they're in quarantine camps right now. And the last thing
your time is up.
The last thing I'll say is 80%.
Please wrap up.
Yep, 80% of the most vaccinated states had the biggest outbreak in the last 2 weeks that has ever been.
Please wrap up.
And this is from the New York Times. And 0% of the least vaccinated states had an outbreak in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you. Wait, please no applause. Please do not applaud. Okay, I'm not I don't have any other Burlington residents who are in person. I'm looking at the online sheet and not seeing any Burlington residents there. The only person who is a Burlington resident who signed up there was Jennifer Moore, who went earlier in person. So we'll transition to non-Burlington folks who are here in person, to be followed by the folks who have signed up who are not from Burlington. So our next speaker will be Matthew Ennis, to be followed by Susan Bowen.
My name is Matthew Ennis. I live in
Just lean into the mic.
Closer?
Yeah.
My name is Matthew Ennis. I live in Winooski. I'm urging you to please vote against this mask mandate. I believe that something really terrible is happening in the world and in this country and here. And I just want to say that dissenting science is real. And everyone is just saying, you know, why don't you believe in science? Everything is conspiracy theory. Well, there are other stories going on here. GMO science by the industry, which says that GMO food and chemical food is safe, and people can challenge that. And the telecommunications industry is saying the cell phones and cell towers and Wi-Fi is safe. And now we're putting up thousands of satellites in space. And I contend that people are getting sick from their food, and people are getting sick from their cell phones and from the 5G. And it doesn't affect everyone right away, but this is combined with what's going on with this virus, which is a nasty virus. And some people have long-term effects. I got this virus at the beginning of last year. I was wiped out for a while, and I recovered well, and I'm lucky, but I'm choosing not to get vaccinated. I don't believe in this agenda. And I feel like a second-class citizen already. And I feel like your proposal, Mr. Mayor, is going to make me more of a second-class citizen because I could be restricted from going into other places. And I'm already restricted from going into places. And what's coming next? And there's evidence that masks don't work, really. And I feel like it's a method of compliance. And I'm totally willing to be respectful of people and put one on when I go into place and do that. But I think mandating it is absolutely wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, the next speaker will be Susan Bowen, to be followed by, I just have Elise.
Hi, I'm Susan Bowen, and I live in Shelburne. And I used to shop in Burlington all the time, except 2 years ago, there were masks required, and I stopped coming here. I just started coming here a couple weeks ago, and it was really nice. You go in a store, people who feel comfortable wearing a mask wear them, people who don't. And I love coming to Burlington, but it's gotten really stressful all of a sudden again. And I think that in layman's terms, besides all the science and all that, I wear glasses, and when I put on a mask, my glasses fog up. So I'm asking you, where does your breath go? And it's going out the sides and up the mask. It's not staying in the mask, especially if you're wearing it for a really long time. Everything's equalizing. So I guess just think about it. And I'm not going to be coming to Burlington, and I know a lot of my friends are not going to be coming to Burlington because they have to wear a mask, or just because it's stressful, or because it's not safe. And that's what I have to say in my humble opinion. And thanks for all being here and doing your work. And I'm a JP in Shelburne, and I really don't want masks coming to Shelburne because we are comfortable there. People wear them, people don't. We're all happy and talking in line, and we're good friends, even though some people have different opinions about this. So let us have our own opinions and you do your thing, and Let America be America.
Thank you. Please hold the applause. Our next speaker will be Elise.
Hi, I am Chi. Thank you for hearing me. I wasn't sure you'd take someone outside of Burlington. I'm here to speak about the effects of a mask on 3 levels: physical, mental, and economic. I also would like to ask you a question, since you are members of the government, as it is my understanding that your primary role is to protect the liberties of the people of this state. How is a mask mandate doing that?
Please allow the speaker to speak.
I would also like to say that there are huge physical consequences for wearing a mask, as well as mental ones, psychological, psychiatric. They're doing studies and finding that especially children are being greatly damaged by wearing masks, and certainly people with COPD. I would like to know who is going to pay me for this mandate. We have not had unfunded mandates since the Civil War got rid of slavery. There has not been an unfunded mandate. I would like to know who's going to be paying me. It's well known that dog owners have stronger immune systems because dogs bring pathogens on their feet into the house, giving their immune system a 30% greater strength. Toxicity of breathing your own bacterial load is great. Anaerobic bacteria is leading to more gum disease and dental cavities, according to dentists. Masks are known to cause, on doctors who wear surgical masks, they're known to cause hypoxia, loss of concentration, deoxidization, bacterial pneumonia, and if you're over 35 years old, after 2 hours of a surgical mask, it begins to deplete the calcium levels in your bones. Masks dehumanize you. They make you feel like you have nothing to say.
Your time is up.
Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Suzanne Harris, to be followed by Scott Decker. Again, please hold the applause.
Hello. So I'm going to be quick. My name is Dr. Susie Harris. I'm a natural health physician and chiropractor in South Burlington, and I live in Winooski. Thank you for listening to us today. I think my main concern is that I just see such a diverse, how do I want to say it? Everybody's different. There's no one size fits all. And I've been super disappointed by the conversations that aren't being had about early prevention, early treatment. These informations are being suppressed. I think that's weird. Masks work, they don't work. I really don't care about the mask. I care about the human right to choose how to walk your path for health. And I care about all of you deeply. I think we're all brothers and sisters trying to figure this out together. My question to you would be, when I think about this, the most frustrating part for me is, if you're going to mandate masks, which I hope that you do not, why is it just for the unvaccinated? It's not just for the unvaccinated. So everyone would have to wear a mask with this mandate. And there was a choice to keep a fine if you don't wear one, if people can actually have a criminal record for not wearing it. Not true. Okay, well, that makes me feel better. I still don't want the mandate. I feel people have the right to choose how to walk their health. And if you have data, I wonder if you do have data that can show me that we are doing better with how we've been doing masks and vaccines in Vermont. I'm not seeing that, especially when I compare us to other states and other countries. I'm just super disappointed. I hope that you take into consideration the human right and sovereignty over our bodies. And if you choose to break into that barrier, I hope you've looked at the data deeply yourself and not just
Your
read
time is up.
quick reports from the CDC.
Our next speaker is Scott Decker. Folks could please hold the applause.
Hello. well. I'm Scott Decker from South Burlington. Given the 2-minute limit, which I didn't expect, I'm going to be just reading, I believe. To paraphrase President Biden, we've been cooperative for a long time, but our cooperation is wearing thin. We have obeyed state mandates and used our best judgment for Vermont to come out of the 2020 pandemic with flying colors, among the best in the nation. We've stayed home, quarantined as needed, gotten tested, worn masks, socially distanced, gotten vaccinated, gotten boosted, basically done all that has been asked of us. Vermont is now the most vaccinated state in the country, and Burlington may be the most vaccinated town in the U.S. So what is our reward for doing everything we were told was the right thing to do? Further mandates, now with draconian penalties attached that were not needed over the past 20 months for this population to comply. How is it you do not trust your population to continue doing what we've been told are best practices for public health? Perhaps because they are not best practices in public health? It's easy to find solid information that the most vaccinated countries and U.S. states also have the highest rates of COVID. That's empirical data, not up for Drs. Levine or Fauci to interpret for us. We also find that mask mandates have little positive effect during an outbreak, but many long-term negative effects. That the city government believes it's their obligation to unilaterally impose health mandates on their constituents, apparently with no background in public health, and the now known negative results of mask masking and vaccination during a pandemic worldwide, smacks of the world further declining into authoritarianism, town by town, city by city. These are not the progressives I grew up with or once voted for. These are not progressive values. Even as you choose not to wake up to the worldwide reality of COVID public health, understand that a lot of constituents already have.
Our next speaker is Bill Moore. Again, please hold the applause. Bill Moore.
Good evening, and Mr. Mayor, it's good to see you again, hopefully next time in January in the halls. I appreciate the ability to speak as a non-resident. I'm from Johnson. You stated earlier that there was not a criminal offense related to this. That's simply not true. Under Vermont statute, all misdemeanors are criminally reportable and become part of a permanent record. If you fail to pay the fines, which I think are absolutely excessive, you can be charged and cited for a true felony for failure to appear or failure to comply with the orders of the court. So the end run of this thing, excuse me, the end run of this thing at $150 for the second offense can quickly rack up. Likelihood that people who are cited for this will have either issues with alcohol or drugs or mental health issues and will fail to comply simply because they have behavioral problems unrelated to COVID is very high, so it's highly discriminatory against them, particularly for the monetary issues. But what I want to do is ask a direct question. If the Burlington Police Department are the only agents of the state and city able to enforce this, what effect will that have on your current problems with a lack of policing and a lack of public safety on these streets late at night when these offenses are most likely to occur? What will you do, and what other agents of the city will you use to enforce this? Do you only intend to use the Burlington Police Department, sir?
So this is not a back and forth.
Well, I think I got my answer. So I would add to that, the addendum to that is simply this. If I'm a proprietor sitting in my pizza joint and someone comes in, finishes their pizza and sits and reads the paper and takes their mask off, do I then get violated and cited as a proprietor for failure to enforce this regulation? Under state statute, that is possible.
Your time is up.
And you're not precluding it in your rule.
Your time is up. Please.
So therefore,
Please allow us to move to the next speaker.
You have just made criminals out of the very people who are running the businesses and helping this community survive.
Your time is up. Please do not.
I'm not going to shop here anymore.
Please respect my ask that you not applaud. I've asked repeatedly that you not applaud. You continuing to do that and disrespect us does not make your point any better. Please just respect that ability. I understand that, but our next speaker is Kelly Devine, to be followed by Ann Sosin. Kelly is participating remotely. Our next speaker is Kelly Devine. Kelly, I'm going to enable your microphone.
Thank you, Council President Tracy. Kelly Devine, speaking as the Executive Director and President of the Burlington Business Association. I wanted to share with the Council that following our meeting with the Mayor 2 weeks ago, we do find that the range of opinions on our members are quite divided on this question of mask mandates. We do think it's important and pretty critical that there be this exemption for the many businesses in Burlington that already are actively screening for vaccination status. Those are primarily, maybe almost exclusively, restaurants and bars. I have a couple of questions I want to put before the council because folks have brought up the question of where the authority lies to enforce this, and our businesses are going to be the front line of implementing and enforcing this policy. I'm wondering if the council has thought about any funding that may be available to support especially our small businesses that tend not to have staff who can actively work to either screen customers for vaccination status and/or enforce mask mandates. I also have a question for the council about what measures the city will take to make sure that all members of our community are aware of this change in policy and are kept up to date and educated about the importance of the policy. And finally, wondering about our critically understaffed public safety resources and whether they'll be diverted to enforcement of this policy. While I do understand the council's approach and the mayor's approach, and I do know that some businesses do see benefit in this policy, I also have others who are very concerned about the health and well-being of their staff at a time when we're already short-staffed, because some staff members find it difficult to nearly cumbersome to wear masks during their 8-hour shift. So I'm going to ask the council consider all those points in their decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ann Sosin, to be followed by JJ Vendette. Ann, I've located you and have enabled your microphone. Ann, it looks like you're muted. Okay. Okay, so I'm not seeing her on there, so I'll keep us moving. Our final speaker for this evening is JJ Vendette. JJ, I've enabled your microphone.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thanks for letting me speak. JJ Vendette, former resident of Burlington, 10 years strong. I now live in Middlesex. I understand that the community and the nation at large is wanting us to do something more about COVID. These mask mandates are not that something. I implore you to look at places that have no mask mandates, like Florida, and how their case counts are going right now. They're doing superbly. I'm going to quote quickly from the New England Journal of Medicine, May 21st, 2020. We know that wearing a mask outside of healthcare facilities offers little, if any, protection from infection. Public health authorities define a significant exposure to COVID as face-to-face contact within 6 feet with a patient with symptomatic COVID-19 that is sustained for at least a few minutes. The chance of catching COVID-19 from a passing interaction in public space is therefore minimal. In many cases, the desire for widespread masking is a reflexive reaction to anxiety over the pandemic. From the New England Journal of Medicine, this is not an effective way to combat COVID. This only promotes fear, which causes disease, and is only going to further harm our society as a whole. People should have the ability to wear masks if they want to, or not if they want to. This is not effective, and I would implore you to vote against this mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. Please hold the applause. So that completes our public forum for this evening. So we will now go into our agenda itself. Our next item is the ordinance itself, the masking ordinance. Is there a motion on that? Councilor Carpenter.
I would move.
Please use your mic.
Right. I would move the resolution as presented. I'm not prepared. As presented on board docs.
Okay, would you like the floor back after a second?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion from Councilor Carpenter. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Stromberg. Okay, Mayor Weinberger, were you looking to offer some remarks?
Thank you, President Tracy. I would appreciate a chance to offer some opening remarks and then get into questions as quick as possible. I certainly understand how the council may well have questions. I know that everyone has been working as quickly as possible since the legislature gave the municipality this authority just a little over a week ago, right before the holiday, and we've worked hard to bring forward this ordinance tonight. I want to particularly thank City Attorney Dan Richardson and Megan Tuttle, our COVID-19 response leader, for the considerable effort they and others have put into this. I want to, acknowledge the strong statements we've heard tonight, and I disagree with many of them and would question, would not agree with many of the arguments were made, but I do share the sense that we are at a challenging moment, and that it is fair to say that we are at a different point in this pandemic than before, and we should think long and hard before we revert back to the strategies from earlier times in the pandemic. And the administration has attempted to do that in what we've brought forward. And what we bring forward recognizes that Burlington and Chittenden County have made enormous progress with respect to COVID-19 over the course of 2021 by achieving some of the highest vaccination rates in the country. And it is very clear that those vaccinations are life-saving. And I would encourage anyone who doubts that to look at the clear data from the CDC, that people who have been vaccinated are, at this point, and it's a little bit lower now than it was during higher parts of the Delta surge, but at this point, unvaccinated individuals are 5 times more likely to become infected, and they are 13 times more likely to die as a result of a COVID infection. And so we should be, I think, proud and appreciative of how the community has rallied to get us to this point, as well as the earlier steps the community took to keep Burlington perhaps the safest city in the country throughout this pandemic. Nonetheless, we are at a moment where the virus is still creating local challenges that warrant action. We see those challenges at the hospital, we see them in our schools, we see them in the general rising levels of transmission. And the administration is proposing that the City Council act immediately to require masks in public places pursuant to the new authority granted by the state last week. We've heard even some confusion in the public comments tonight, so I want to be really clear that the proposed ordinance provides 2 options to organizations that are managing spaces that are generally accessible to the public. That is what we are attempting to regulate with this proposed mask ordinance, is not publicly owned spaces alone, but places that are generally accessible to the public. The organization, usually the businesses, but in some cases we have nonprofits, managing these spaces have two options for how they will meet this mandate. They have the option either to require masks for all patrons and employees that are in that public space, or alternatively to require patrons and employees to show proof of vaccination before entering. If a business or organization chooses that second option, then masks are not required in that space. It is critical I think as we debate this, that we recognize that we are in a different place than we were previously, and I want to be clear about the objectives that that there are multiple objectives the administration is trying to achieve with the mask ordinance as proposed. There are three. We are attempting to decrease rates of virus transmission through this ordinance, and there's no doubt that masking and there's no doubt that additional vaccination does decrease transmission. Secondly, we are seeking to see this as yet another opportunity now, a new authority that the city has to encourage even higher levels of vaccination, and believe that the way we have proposed this will achieve that. And finally, we are proposing this in a way that is as targeted and strategic as possible, in a way that minimizes the disruption and the negative impact on the community and society, really, as we attempt to recover from this long and grinding pandemic. Since the final point I want to make at this point, and look forward to, again, acknowledging the council's had a short time with this. I expect that there could be need for back and forth. The city attorney is able to speak to numerous elements of the ordinance. I think can clarify things like, is this a criminal versus a civil violation for failing to meet this ordinance? It is a civil penalty, even the kind of payment question that was raised, but the city attorney can speak further to that. We also, I believe we do have Megan Tuttle, the COVID-19 response leader, here available to answer questions. I want to be really clear that I think it is important that this ordinance be adopted basically as presented. I will support a mask mandate that includes exemptions for businesses that affirmatively verify vaccination status of patrons and employees. This is both, I think, the right thing, a stronger public health stance, and it is one that is critically important for many of the organizations here in Burlington, and that's what we've heard in the public forums and other engagement we've done over the last couple weeks. Widespread vaccination is by far the most effective intervention for controlling the virus, and I think it would be wrong to strip the provision out of this that encourages more adoption of that intervention. The proposed ordinance furthers these efforts by creating a significant new incentive for businesses to limit access to their spaces to vaccinated individuals and for individuals to get vaccinated. Should the council remove this exemption or make the ordinance more broad, I will not be able to support it tonight, and will not be, don't see a route for it to be implemented quickly. The final point I just want to make is this, and then I'll stop. I have heard concern about the suggestion has been made that somehow it is a stronger public health effort to remove the vaccine exemption, and I just really hope the council will will not move forward and act on that point. I don't see how that could possibly be right. I don't think you'll find any public health official that will say that the risk of transmission is higher in a location where everyone in that location is vaccinated and masks are optional than the risk of transmission in a space where vaccinations are optional and masks are required. That is the choice that we have as local officials before us. The state has certainly not granted us the authority to require that all spaces be vaccinations. So that is really the choice before us. Do you want optional in all spaces, optional vaccinations and required masks, or required vaccinations and optional masks? I think clearly the latter, with spaces that everyone in there has been vaccinated, is safer. If the goal of the council is to reduce transmissions, I really don't see any argument for why that exemption should be removed. And I hope the council will consider that. Thank you, President Tracy.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberg. Please do not interrupt us as we're deliberating. City Attorney Richardson, did you want to speak to some of the issues or questions that the mayor had referenced at this time before we get into deliberations?
I think the only question that I wanted to address was the question that came up in the public comments of the criminal versus...
Please do not interrupt him.
Criminal versus civil distinction, which is... So the way in which municipal ordinances work, municipalities do not have the power to impose felony criminal sanctions. There are two choices. There is criminal or civil. In this particular ordinance, it has elected that it's drafted as a civil offense, which is not a misdemeanor, and it does not go to criminal court. It goes to the Judicial Bureau. You do have a right to contest such a citation, but if you either don't or don't pay, it doesn't transform into a criminal violation. It effectively becomes it remains a civil violation and becomes a private, well, not private, but a collections matter, rather than some sort of criminal penalty with the criminal enforcement or criminal tag attached to it. And I simply want to clarify that that's the way Vermont statutes are set up. And that was a concern certainly in the legislature when they were debating the authority to authorize this, whether cities or municipalities would go with criminal or civil penalties. And the city in drafting this, or the administration in drafting this, elected to go with the civil route. So it simply was a monetary fine rather than any type of criminal sanction.
Please do not interrupt us. Please do not interrupt us. Please do not interrupt us. We are in our deliberations. Please do not interrupt us during our deliberations. No, please do not interrupt us, and please show respect. Our next speaker is, please allow us to undergo our deliberations. Please allow us to have our deliberations.
I guess I would
Attorney Richardson?
Yeah, I would simply add, and I don't want to necessarily get into a back and forth, that, if you look at section 1-9, it does talk about turning it into a criminal, but as it's been drafted in the specific ordinance this time, it is a civil violation. It remains in civil. It does not give the option for criminal prosecution, and it's our understanding as a city that it would be handled as strictly a civil matter. And that's a criminal element is an election that the city would have to make. It's not one that's imposed by the Judicial Bureau.
Thank you. The floor is now open for councilors. Please do not interrupt us. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President Tracy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Dan, for bringing this proposal in front of us. Maybe everybody can hear me. I think we all should understand that we live in very hard and certain times, and I agree with some of the sentiments here, that we need to come together as human, as Burlingtonians, and together we can figure this out, and together we can win. That's the only way.
Please don't interrupt Councillor Jang.
And it doesn't matter where you stand on this issue. I really thank all of those that speak up and do it also respectfully. Yes, we may not be medical experts, but we rely on the expertise of those who have the knowledge and the expertise in order for us to make the decisions.
Please stop interrupting.
Reason why I would like to invite someone here. Her name is Ann Sosen, and she is a policy fellow at Nelson A. Rockefeller Center at Dartmouth College.
Sorry, please don't interrupt Councillor Jang. Councillor Jang,
yes.
What is your request?
To invite someone, a policy fellow at the Nelson A. Rockefeller Center.
Do you have questions for this individual to help you make your decision?
Yes, I do have questions, and I also want to hear from her, ask a question in order for me to make my informed decision.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I will allow you to ask this person a question. The person in question, Ann Sosen, is participating in the meeting remotely, so I've enabled your microphone. Councillor Jang, what is your question for this public health professional?
I have several questions, but the first one is basically, what does she think about the exemptions as part of the ordinance in front of us? Exemptions, specifically C.
Thanks. I would like to start by speaking to the strengths of the proposal, if permitted.
So if you can just please answer Councillor Jang's question, and please keep your responses brief.
Yes, and maybe you can start with the strength of this proposal first. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your leadership in bringing this mask mandate forward. There are several things that I like about this proposal, and think that it's a good way forward for the city of Burlington, and it offers a model for other parts of Vermont and other cities across the U.S. I think first, one key strength is that the approach is data-driven. It's linked to CDC guidance. It turns on and off automatically depending on transmission levels. And I think that this is really a model for the state of Vermont. Second, I think the policy that's proposed is strong because it requires masking in all indoor settings that are open to the public, and it's aligned with the current CDC recommendations. Third, I appreciate that the policy makes reasonable accommodations in some settings based on vaccination status, and I think that is appropriate at this stage of the pandemic and recognizes the difficulties of implementing this across all settings. That said, I would advise the council that you consider limiting the exemption narrowly to those settings where masking is simply not feasible, including restaurants, bars, and gyms. I think we have substantial evidence that transmission can occur readily in indoor settings, even among vaccinated people. And that vaccination is highly protective against severe outcomes, including hospitalization and death. But at this time and with this level of community transmission, it's simply not sufficient to prevent infections and transmission. So I think that the city will be well served by a policy that's designed to optimize masking across all indoor settings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Jang?
Yes, thank you.
Continue. Please continue. Please
Thank you so
continue,
much.
Councillor Jang.
Thank you.
Councillor Jang, please continue.
Okay, thank you so much. And I have another question. And why should we limitations, about these types of mandates that are not medically recommended, including in workplaces?
Can you please repeat your question? It was hard for me to.
Why should we limit these limitations about these types of mandates?
Are
not medically recommended, yes.
So it is recommended, the CDC guidance currently recommends masking in all indoor settings, and that does include workplaces. And masking is one tool that we want to use in addition to vaccination to control transmission. And we see substantial transmission in workplaces because people spend long periods of time in indoor settings that are often poorly ventilated together. And so this is one area where we should try, that we want to try to increase masking as much as possible.
Okay. And the last question is around the nation. Do you have a specific state or county or city that is doing a great job in limiting transmission?
I would say that there are several models, and I think that the proposal that I would say that.
Please allow the person to answer Councilor Jang's question.
So I would say that there are several models, and would also add that the model being proposed.
Please stop interrupting. Stop interrupting.
She is an expert that has been invited by a member of this council.
Please allow this to continue. Please allow Councilor Jang to. Please allow Councilor Jang to continue. Please allow Councilor Jang to continue.
This was planned, very manipulative.
Stop interrupting. Please allow Councilor Jang to continue. Stop interrupting. Please allow Councilor Jang to continue. Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President Tracy. And I was just wondering if there are best practices around the nation that you have noticed and you would want to share with us.
I think that there are a couple of models, and I'll add that I see the proposal that's coming from the mayor as one that will potentially serve as a model for other places as well. The state of Nevada has a data-driven mask policy that is linked to CDC guidance and metrics, and it turns transmission, or it turns on and off automatically as local change. I would the Bay Area has a different model of data-driven policy. I will also add that the city of Boulder has a data-driven model in place, and there are aspects of Burlington's proposal that I think will be useful to other places that are thinking about how to do this right now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Anne, for your time. Thank you for being here with us.
Councilor Shane.
Thank you.
I'd like to speak to members of the public. I have been very sympathetic to people who don't want a mask mandate. I think there are arguments on both sides of this issue, and I want to share with you how you are making me feel right at this moment. You are making me feel like you hate us, like you hate people who want a mask mandate.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish. Please allow Joan to finish. Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish. I'm sorry.
I want to tell you.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
I want to tell you that the outbursts are not helpful to me in persuading me.
Please allow Councilor Shannon.
That reasonable people.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
I want to talk a little bit about what is standard practice in this room. If councilors would like to speak to somebody before making their decision, we are allowed to call upon someone. And that is what Councilor Jang just did. Now, I may agree with what that person says or disagree. I may respect her credentials or not, but we get to listen to the people that we feel will be helpful to us in making this decision. This is.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
It doesn't matter who she is. It could be you.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
It is the council president's job to keep order in this room. And if people cannot respect the order in this room, they can be removed from this room. And that's appropriate.
That's what they do in Russia. That's what they do.
You can watch it on TV. We cannot have...
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish. Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
Every issue that's discussed in this room has the same set of rules that we're living by tonight. And screaming and shouting at this council isn't likely to yield the result that you want. And I will tell you, there are people at this table, actually on the other side of this table, who, when we first brought forward a mask mandate, there were many who had concerns about how a mask mandate is going to affect different people. And this has become such a politically polarized issue that it seems like you want to demonstrate to me. One of the arguments that I've heard that I have found to be persuasive on the side of not having a mask mandate is that we can all be responsible adults. And we can all determine for ourselves if we need to be masked or if we don't need to be masked. People don't like mandates. And clearly a lot of people in this room...
Stop. Please stop. Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
You are making me, every time you clap, every time you yell, I will tell you, you're pushing me in the opposite direction you want me to go in.
Please stopping. Please stop. Please stop. Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
I am just sharing kind of human nature here. We are polarizing each other, and it's not helpful.
Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
To me, it's not respectful when people come. We've asked people to mask because we're in close contact with each other. I've had a lot of input from people who are vaccinated, who go to the store wearing a mask, who go into indoor spaces wearing a mask, and they've asked me not to support a mask mandate for a whole variety of reasons. But to me, when you come into this room, you're sitting in close proximity to people, and we have asked politely that people wear a mask, and yet people seem to want to come here and to make a point that don't wear a mask. That is not showing me...
Please do not interrupt Councilor Shannon.
That is not showing me that we don't need a mask mandate. It kind of shows me the opposite of that. That we can't trust people to be adults.
Please stop. Please stop. Please allow Councilor Shannon to finish.
President Tracy?
Yes, Councilor Shannon.
I think it is your choice. It is very hard for us to have a civil debate, which I look forward to having here with my colleagues. I look forward to my colleagues getting the expert information or non-expert information that they choose. And I don't know how we do that with members of the public interrupting us and yelling at us all night long. So I will end my comments with that. It was really my hope that some people could understand that we need to be able to have our debate, and that not having our debate isn't really going to get the result that you want.
Please stop interrupting. Please stop interrupting. Please stop interrupting. Councilor, our next speaker is Councilor Mason. Councilor Mason, go ahead.
Thank you, President Tracy. May I ask some questions of the City Attorney that were raised in public comment, please?
Sure, go ahead.
City Attorney Richardson, could you speak, or someone in the administration, to the enforcement piece? There was a question raised about who would be issuing these potential civil violations. Would it be the police? Would it be incumbent on a proprietor? I think it would be helpful for the public and the council to know, given that there is a civil offense, who will be administering that.
City Attorney Richardson?
Sure, I'd be happy to. It's our understanding that it would generally be the police that would issue these citations, as they do most civil offenses, but given that they are not criminal offenses, that we're not talking about the same type of criminal enforcement that police usually do. Just as we do zoning, there may be designated individuals, city officials, who would carry that authority to do the citation. But presently, I think it would fall to the police primarily.
Thank you. And to be clear, though, these are city employees, meaning we're not going to deputize the owner of the store to issue a civil violation.
That is correct. And we would not deputize people. It would be strictly those who would carry the as city officials.
Wonderful, thank you. I think there was another question asked about, how information, not just if this were to be adopted, but there are also potential changes. And this may not be to you, City Attorney Richardson, how the city intends to get information and generate publicity, about either the ordinance going into effect or changes to the ordinance.
Sorry, Councilor Mason. The question is, how are we going to make sure everybody knows
I think
about the changes? I mean, we've developed over the course of the pandemic, I think, good communication systems for communicating, especially with the organizations that are going to be on the kind of front lines of this. The organizations and businesses that manage public spaces, and we have already been in touch with them. We've already had public forums. We have good email lists. Carl Nazraoui, the head of our COVID recovery effort, it has very good communication channels with the organizations that are going to be responsible for this. As far as individuals, we will certainly be continuing to communicate by email, newsletter, by press release, by social media, by certainly this is going to make it into traditional media as well. So I think there's a lot of attention to this, and the word will get out, and we will use that as there are updates. We will move quickly to disseminate the information about those updates as well. If there are, I will say one additional specific COVID communication thing that I think is important is the city will be paying for signage for the business.
Please allow the mayor to continue.
For the businesses that will be posting.
Please stop.
The city will be helping to get signage up as well, so it'll be clear to patrons coming into these businesses what the rules are. There's a separate signage for businesses that are pursuing the exemption than for businesses that will be having the mask option. So I think we're gonna, if there are other ideas about how we facilitate this, happy to hear those out.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm hemming and hawing about whether to make my statements because I'm not really sure I want to get the blowback that I'm going to get the blowback for making my statement. But if that was the intent, I'm not going to let you win. The reality is we have a very fragile system right now. Just today, the hospital announced it's shutting down its ICU other than cancer patients in the most intensive. From my perspective, to ignore pleas like that is not responsible. Cases are at their highest point. We have rising hospitalizations, rising deaths, and the positivity rate is at serious. I don't know how we as a body acting responsibly can simply turn a blind eye to the public health emergency and the fragility of the current system. No one wants to wear a mask. I don't want to wear it any more than those of you out there who aren't wearing a mask. But I also respect, or I believe, you may have a different view, that individual liberties at times have to be curtailed for public health reasons, and we are at that point in time. The shouting back and forth, sitting on this side of the table, it doesn't help. I mean, I can shake my head. It makes me want to leave the room, not vote on this. But that gives you the victory. Those who oppose this for reasons gives you the victory that you don't deserve by simply yelling at us. This is the deliberative body, and like it or not, we have afforded the opportunity of the public to weigh in. Those comments are being taken into consideration along with other information. That's the way our process works. If you don't like it, run for office and get on this side of the table. Please, I
allow
welcome you
Councilor
to do
Mason to
that.
continue.
So I respect that there are those, who have a different view about the impact or whether masks have any efficacy. I've listened to what I believe are experts, and they do. And so from my perspective, this is not a challenging vote. This is a vote, we have appropriate guardrails in the event that things change, and we all hope they do. But asking us to put on a mask for a little while, I'm doing it anyway, and most of us are. So I don't think it's a too big an ask, and I will be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mason. I don't have any other councilors in the queue. Councilor Stromberg, go ahead.
Thanks. That was very well put. I agree with a lot of what was said. The scary part about all of this is that we really just don't know what we don't know. Today they found their first case of the Omicron, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, a couple of different versions there, but of that variant in the United States. So it's here, it's going around, that's inevitable. We knew that was gonna happen. We're talking about like 30 days with this resolution. So every 30 days, we'll check in and see, where we stand with it. So I think as a community, it's almost like an obvious choice, like we've been doing it this far, to be safe through the holidays while people are gathering inside, and err on the side of caution. I think that as the weather gets colder, we're all inside anyway, the gatherings are larger. It's just, to me, it's like these 30 days are gonna go by so quickly and we'll have so much more information. We still don't even know the effects of Thanksgiving and gatherings. Like, I have 2 younger sisters who had COVID, and it hits close to home. And this is not speaking from anxiety. This is me looking at the data and statistics and a lot of what you're looking at in some ways. And I just think that we should be more civil about this and just think of it as in segments. This isn't a forever thing. We don't want this to be a forever thing. This is gonna loom throughout our lives if we don't really nip it now. And I know I'm frustrated too. I'm really frustrated on many fronts about this. I would love to not have to wear a mask and be able to, not have to limit everyone I'm seeing. But I think, it's these small things that are sacrifices, and that's also the American way, is making those sacrifices. So don't leave that part out of the conversation. And another thing too, just out of respect for people who are working downtown in Burlington, a lot of people are afraid because this is that peak shopping season, and people are already starting to see that uptick of people going into their businesses. So I think we should just be realistic about this and know that this isn't a forever thing. Nobody here wants this to be a thing. It's just we do care about you, and you care about our liberties. We care about each other. It's just we need to really kind of hear each other out on this and not yell it necessarily. So I personally will be supporting this because of the way it's laid out, and I very much appreciate Attorney Richardson and the administration putting this forth. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, I don't have, Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Tracy. I remain worried about the burden we're placing on businesses that are still struggling with staffing and service issues in this pandemic by adding additional requirements without additional government aid and stimulus that they received over the last year. We know that vaccination is our ticket out of the current situation, and the unvaccinated are giving unnecessary fuel to the pandemic and represent a majority of the serious illness and the hospitalizations. Any policy we pass tonight should encourage and reward vaccination. That's why I was glad to see that we have the exemption C that attempts to address as best we can the risks that the new masking restrictions will create for businesses, as well as promoting the desired vaccination behavior. We already have businesses in Burlington that are requiring vaccination, and they're operating successfully this way. So we should encourage more to do so. And I think it's important that we have this particular provision in the resolution. Also, I think we should commit to ending this mandate as soon as possible, not necessarily waiting the full balance of the 30-day cycles if we do fall below the CDC transmission classifications within Chittenden County into the low and moderate levels. And I think the language in the resolution as currently written would allow us to do that through council and executive action. So if we passed it tonight, we should also continually revisit that as often as we can and get out of it as soon as we can. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't have anyone else in
Sorry, I have one.
the queue. Councilor Mason, go ahead.
No, just a quick question for the city attorney.
Sure.
City Attorney Richardson, I'm not understanding if this is on line 55.
No, I understand.
There's reference to part 103. I don't know if that's a typo or if I'm missing something. The language says unless otherwise accepted in part 103.
That is a typo. My original draft had the sections as 1.01, so that should be corrected. That would be.
I'm happy to make an amendment if you tell me what the is it section 10 or section 17-10C. Okay, so President Tracy, I'd like to propose an amendment on line 55 to change part 103 to section 17-10C.
Thank you. We have a motion. There's a second from Councilor Shannon. Did you want the floor back?
No.
Okay. Any discussion on the amendment put forward by Councilor Mason to make a technical correction? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to a vote on that amendment. All those in favor of adopting the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries unanimously, and we are back to the underlying resolution as amended. I have Councilor Hightower and then Councilor Shannon.
Great. Just wanted to also say that I'm supportive of this resolution, including as executive director of a Burlington nonprofit business. I think that this is actually extremely helpful in setting norms that my business is already trying to implement. Also just want to thank Councilor Shannon for being the first to speak. I think that's always a hard thing to do in rooms like this, and appreciate, sorry, Professor Dang, sorry to speak directly to the room. Apologies for that. I think that's a difficult thing to do to both Councilor Dang and Councilor Shannon. And then I just also want to say that I'm appalled at some of the comments that were made. I hate to lump everybody into the same bucket because I know that that's not fair either, but I don't even know how slavery came up in this, but that was wild, and unfunding of policies and whatever else. But I was very uncomfortable in this room. I would have never voted no to a mask mandate, but I think I'm generally a compromiser, certainly would have been open to hearing real concerns, but the screams at me did not sound like real concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilor Shannon next.
I'll pass for now.
Okay, I don't have anyone else in the queue. Councilor Jang.
Yep. I wanted to speak specifically about the exemption C as part of the resolution, which will allow businesses to require vaccination cards in order to allow students or patrons to enter their buildings. From my perspective and from what we have heard here, from what I heard here today is basically it will bring some type of discrimination against those who are vaccinated and those who are not, which I agree a little bit about around that aspect. And there is no way for businesses to receive the amount of support necessary for them to be able to require patrons to show their cards. We have a working shortage from the business owners. We have heard it not once, not twice, and across all industries. And also, I don't know, how can we, a business owner, can take a staff member, let him outside in this cold weather to control vaccination cards? And what about those who have been vaccinated and who no longer have their vaccination cards with them? What are they going to do to get the services and the goods they need that a specific business is providing? I've been to Europe not long ago, and I know firsthand that this is a policy they have. They could not take my vaccination card from the United States. Had to go into groups to show them that this is what I have. I do not have the digital one that you guys have. It's complex. The best way, from my perspective, is to keep this policy simple. Very simple. Anyone entering a business, anyone entering a public building need to definitely wear a mask. If we're saying mask works, I think this is the opportunity that Burlington can show that we believe mask work. We also believe on your liberty to choose to take the vaccine or to not take the vaccine. And I would like to make an amendment taking that aspect of this resolution down, if I have a second.
So we have a motion from Councillor Jang. So Councillor Jang, to be clear, you are wanting to strike subpoint C?
Yes, the exemption C, and leave A and B.
Leaving A and B?
Yes.
Okay. All right, is everybody clear on what Councillor Jang is moving to amend?
Not really. Is this deleting lines 81 through 85?
Councillor Jang, are you able to please clarify?
I hear.
So, yeah. So this is deleting. This the language C saying any person entering a business or a portion of a business located within a public building, including but not limited to retail, food or beverage, gym, theater, or similar high-traffic business, which actively screens and limits who may enter its premises to only person with established proof of vaccination for the COVID-19 virus will not be obligated to wear a mask, a face covering without the business, but only to the extent of the person it actually screened and provides proof of vaccination. That language from line 81 to 85, I would like to strike it as an amendment.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Are you clear now, Councillor?
Yes, thank
Councillor
you.
Mason? Thank you. Is everybody clear on the amendment?
Is there a second?
Okay, yeah, I'm just wanting to make sure. Is there a second on that? Is there a second on that? Okay, Councillor Jang, the amendment fails for lack of a second.
Thank you, President Tracy.
Thank you. So our next, so I have Councillor Carpenter to be followed by Councillors McGee and Mason. Councillor Carpenter.
Just relative to that portion, and I'm going to ask the city to clarify, but as I read it and I understand it, that would be a choice of a specific business to go the extra effort to hire staff or appoint staff to check vaccine cards. It's not a general requirement. It's a specific, like Honey Road across the road there, made a business decision that they can attract more customers by having a vaccine requirement. I personally think it won't be broad because it requires a lot of affirmative additional effort on the part of the business owner. It would be good if more business owners do it, but I would venture to say that most retail, the grocery stores, any big retail that cannot control it and is unwilling to put a paid staff member at the door won't exercise that. I mean, I was just in Montreal, and where it actually is required, it's a big commitment. We're offering it as an option. It is not a requirement that you check vaccines under this, as I understand it, unless I'm not understanding it. Otherwise, everybody wears a mask. And I think giving businesses a choice, if they want to do that extra mile, is a reasonable thing.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. I have Councillor McGee to be followed by Councillor Mason.
Thank you, President Tracy. I am joining virtually tonight because I'm on the tail end of a breakthrough case myself. So am certainly supportive of this ordinance, and I think given what we're seeing with our hospital system, struggling to keep up with the number of COVID cases we're seeing as we approach the peak of the cold and flu season as well, which we didn't have last year. I think it's vitally important that we're using all the tools that we have to make sure that our healthcare workers are able to keep up with the challenges that they're facing right now. And given the new variant that we're seeing as well, I don't think we know enough about that to say whether vaccines are sufficient protection against that. So, with that in mind, I would like to make a motion to remove from line 82, retail and theaters from 17-10C exceptions, removing retail and theater from subsection C.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second on this. Just before we get into discussion on that, is everybody clear on what on what Councillor McGee has proposed? Councillor Shannon?
I think that would include performers if there was no exemption for theater. Is that correct?
Councillor McGee?
I think if we can, I see the mayor would like to speak there, so.
Thank you. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you, President Tracy and Councilor McGee. I did just, and maybe I'll let City Attorney Richardson speak to this, and then I think the ordinance does contemplate the performers and athletes in a different section.
That's right. In section 17-10A, the definition of public building, it excludes specifically the portions of a theater, gym, or athletic arena where all of the individuals performing, exercising, or playing have been vaccinated, and where there's either space or physical barrier or ventilation system that separates them from the general public or audience. So removing this language from the exemption would not affect that definition because they're excluded. And I think the intent was that those performers who were vaccinated and were essentially separated by some type of space distancing barrier or ventilation system would be exempt from the mask mandate by definition of the rule. The inclusion of theater later on was really for a theater where everyone in attendance was screened for vaccination status.
Thank you. Councillor Shannon, are you
Yes,
all set?
thank you.
Okay.
That's very helpful.
Does anyone else have any clarifying questions on what Councillor McGee is proposing? Or Councillor Barlow?
Yes, I'm still unclear about whether or not we're are we removing gym from this ordinance?
Councillor McGee?
No, just theater. Could you repeat the pieces that you'd like to remove?
It would just be retail and theater from line 82.
Okay, thank you.
Are you clear? Councillor Hightower?
Yeah, and then just a clarifying thing, because I think if we don't potentially remove the but not limited to, then I am afraid this may not have much of an effect. So I wonder if it was Councilor McGee's intent to strike.
If the city attorney could clarify that, then I would include that as well.
Attorney Richardson?
Yes, Councillor Hightower is correct. If you keep the three words, but not limited, actually for not limited to, would, by striking retail and theater, it does raise a question, or at least creates a gray area as to whether those two areas that have been removed are effectively removed from the general definition of businesses or portion of businesses. So striking those additional four words would I think, clarify that if the intent is to put retail and theater off the table of available businesses that would be available to seek this exemption.
Okay, does that clarify for you, Councilor Hightower?
Can we make that clarification?
Yeah, with that in mind, I would move to strike, but not limited to, and as well as retail and theater from line 82.
Okay, so that's an amendment to the amendment, Councilor McGee. Thank you. Is there a second to Councilor McGee's amendment to the amendment? Thank you. Councilor Hightower seconds. Any discussion on that amendment to the amendment?
Point of order, I don't think that makes sense.
Okay.
So if I understand the amendment, it would now read, any person entering a business or portion of a business located within a public building, food and beverage, gym.
No, including food and beverage.
Including food and beverage?
Please.
Okay, I still grammatically don't think that makes sense, but I understand the intent. I mean, you're referring to a restaurant and a bar. I don't know what is a food and beverage business? Okay, I'm not gonna, sorry, may I have the floor after my point of information?
Go ahead.
I would welcome some thought maybe from the maker if he's prepared to, as to why. I didn't hear an explanation as to why.
Sure.
What's the objective behind this amendment?
Sure. Councilor McGee?
Sure. My intention with this is that with the increased community transmission we're seeing and the fact that vaccination does not fully stop transmission, that with the holiday shopping season and a lot of our theaters reopening, that those are places where folks are gathering in maybe larger numbers than these other places. And so I think at least while we are facing the uncertainty of this new variant, the holiday shopping season and family gatherings, I think it makes sense, at least for this initial 30-day period, for us to consider this, these removals from this exemption. So that is my intent behind this amendment. Excuse me.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Councilor Mason?
Thank you, President Tracy. I appreciate that explanation, Councilor McGee, but I'm concerned that what I heard in the beginning, and I'm not the expert who's been asked this question, but what you're proposing is actually less safe from a public health perspective than requiring everyone to be vaccinated. So I will not be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Councilor Carpenter.
I pretty well can understand retail. I don't understand what the definition of a theater is. I mean, just in the sense that, is it the Flynn Theater? Is it a movie theater? I mean, I don't know what a theater is. And that's all, so I'm asking that as kind of clarifying.
Would you like the city attorney to speak to that,
Yes.
Councilor? Okay, thank you. City Attorney Richardson, are you able to please speak to that definition of a theater?
Sure. The word theater is not defined in this. And again, these were just simply, I think, put out as potential examples. They were not intended as either an exclusive or definitive list. So certainly, I think what was potentially in mind was any of the theater options, whether it be a live theater or a movie theater or anything that would fit under it. And it was just an example of a type of place where people might be brought indoors, and by having the vaccination screening would be allowed in those areas not to be subject to a mask mandate.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Carpenter, you still have the floor.
No, I think I'm fine with that understanding, being mindful that we only have a small number of theaters in the city of Burlington.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Councilor Barlow, to be followed by Councilor Jang.
Yes, I'm just trying to become clear on the amendment to the amendment is simply the including but not limited to language?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any further discussion of the amendment to the amendment? Mayor Weinberger.
Thank you, President Tracy. I appreciate, I'm open to this amendment, and I appreciate the spirit of trying to get it right and get it consistent with what we heard from the expert who called in, Ann Sosin, that really this exemption is particularly important in the establishments that Councilor McGee's amendment leaves in. And if the council, I don't really see a downside if a retailer wanted to do this. Again, I think it would be a higher level of public health. But if the council feels that this is an amendment that makes the council more comfortable with it, I don't really have an objection. I would ask there be consideration, and I say that in part because I think it is the establishments that are likely to pursue this exemption are bars, restaurants, and gymnasiums, which are left in by the amendment. That said, I have heard some interest from establishments I think are a little bit in a gray area in the language currently, which are convenience stores. Convenience stores many of them offer do have food being sold and consumed on site, and I think we should. I would recommend and think it important that it be clear that convenience stores are added to the list if the other changes to this definition are going to be removed. Thank you, President Tracy.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Councilor Shannon.
Thank you, President Tracy. I just sent Councilor McGee some suggested language that I think accomplishes what he's suggesting, but maybe alter rather than the cut and paste. It might work a little bit more smoothly. So my suggestion is any person entering a restaurant, cafe, cafeteria, bar, gym, we could add dining establishment, which actively screens and limits who may enter into premises to only persons with established proof of vaccination. All the rest is the same, but I think it gets at what Councilor Mason's concern is in terms of making the sentence flow properly.
Sure. So
I've sent that by email, and I'll leave it to Councilor McGee if he wants to make that technical adjustment to his amendment. I think it accomplishes the same goal that he was trying to achieve.
Right. So I appreciate that. We're not allowed to amend an amendment to the amendment. So
it is an amendment to the amendment, right?
So we're on an amendment to the amendment. So you can't do an amendment. You can't further amend, Councilor Shannon. So we have to vote on the amendment to the amendment first in order to further revise the amendment itself. You could come back with further clarifying language at that point.
I have a point of view.
I'm aware of the rule. I'm just unclear as to, I may have missed an amendment. Councilor McGee has the only amendment I'm aware of. What was the further amendment?
He further amended. Councilor McGee, are you able to clarify what your amendment to the amendment was?
Sure. The amendment to the amendment was the removal of, sorry, one sec. But not limited to.
I'm sorry, what?
So,
But not limited to.
Councilor McGee, can you please clarify that?
Oh, okay.
So the amendment to the amendment removes but not limited to.
I see.
Are you clear now, Councilor Shannon?
Yes, just as a procedural matter, I might suggest that council, rather than amending amendments, I might suggest that Councilor McGee reiterate his amendment. If he thinks this language accomplishes what his amendments were trying to accomplish.
Councilor McGee, will you reiterate again your amendment to the amendment?
Sure. Sorry, this is too many windows for me here. So I would like to amend my amendment to change to sorry, uncharted territory for me here. President Tracy, I'm not sure. Does it make sense for me to reiterate this or for us to amend the amendment and then can I clarify my original amendment? I think that.
Sure. Councillor McGee, we need to, can you please, let's take a brief recess just to get this straight, because I'm not totally, I would really appreciate if you can just if we can take a 5-minute recess and if you can just gather your thoughts so that we can get clear on this before we have to take a vote. Thank you.
Sure.
We'll come back at 7:23. Councilors, please take your seats, and if folks want to continue to have conversations, if you could please take them into the other room. If you'd like to continue to have conversations, please take them outside so we can continue. If folks could please take any conversations outside so that we can continue our meeting. Okay, well, let's get back into discussion on this. Thanks for taking a recess. I think that we should have clarity now. Councilor McGee, are you able to just speak to provide some clarity on what your amendment to the amendment is?
Sure. So I want to clarify that the amendment affects lines 81 through 83 and removes business or a portion of a business located within a public building, including but not limited to, and leaves in food and beverage, adds in the word establishment, bar or gym, and then removes theater or similar high traffic business, and then leaves on line 83 after that, which actively screens and limits who may enter into its premises to only persons with established proof of vaccination for the COVID-19 virus. It leaves the rest of the subsection C the same.
Thank you.
Is that clear?
No. Okay. Point of information.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'm sorry, it's hard for me to hear it. I think it would be easier if it's in writing, but are you saying that we're now leaving in the including but not limited to? I didn't really hear what you said.
So it removes business or a portion of a business located within a public building, including but not limited to retail. It leaves in food and beverage establishment, bar or gym.
Okay.
And then removes theater or similar high traffic business.
And I think my question was, because I understand, Councilor Shannon, this is some aspect of a version that you were interested in as well. Does this in any way change the intent? It's just hard for me to absorb it verbally, I think, of the Councilor McGee, of the amendment that you had sort of been looking to propose, or do you feel that this effectively does the same thing?
I think it effectively does the same thing.
Okay. Okay, that was my question on this. And I did actually have a question also for the mayor, but I'm not sure. Do we want to, actually, I do want to ask that before we would vote on this, I guess, but if other people are in the queue and want to speak towards this, that's fine. So,
Point of information.
Councilor Shannon, go ahead.
Just to clarify the language, I believe it is the language that was just circulated. Is that, yeah, everybody should have it in their email. And if there's a difference from that, if Councilor McGee could point that out, but I think it is the language that was just circulated to the council.
Okay, I see it now. Thank you for letting me know that it's there. Thank you. Sorry, President Tracy, did you want me to ask a further, or did you want me to circle back?
I don't have anyone else in the queue, so if you do have another question, you can go ahead right now.
I just had a quick question. Mayor, when you had mentioned the convenience store aspect, can you clarify what you were, I guess I didn't understand if you were saying that you thought that should be included in the food and bev aspect, or if it should be not included. I think I just didn't really process that, or I needed clarification on it.
Mayor Weinberg.
Thank you, Councilor Freeman. Yes, I actually think I was confused and improperly thinking that somehow with the amendment that convenience stores would be excluded, but they because the language from Councilor McGee would leave in food and beverage establishments. That would capture convenience stores. So I'm withdrawing that concern. I'm satisfied with this. I have no objection to this this amendment.
Right.
Okay, because, oh, sorry.
So Councilor Freeman, did you have another question?
Yeah, so I was trying to, so basically you're looking to make sure that convenience stores could use the vaccine aspect to be exempted. Is that correct? Am I understanding what you're saying correctly?
Yeah, yes, Councilor Freeman. I think I'm not sure how likely that is. I have heard at least one convenience store operator express potential interest in this. And again, since I see that is only achieving a higher level of public health standard and reducing the chance of transmission in those, I don't know why we would object to that in the maybe unlikely situation that the convenience store owner operator wanted to take that step. So I support keeping that in there as well as the others.
Thank you for the clarification. That is all the points of information. I did want to speak towards the amendment itself, but I'm not sure.
Yep.
Is this a good time to do that? Okay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I am supportive of this amendment. I think that I could have seen reason to, as Councillor Jang had proposed, to sort of strike this section as a strike all. But I gather that there isn't really a way forward with that. I don't think that that will work as a compromise. I think, like, if I had my druthers, I probably wouldn't. I hear what you're saying about the convenience stores, but like to me, it just doesn't seem like really necessary to provide an exemption. I know that I'm probably on the further end of the spectrum, is just given the nature of my personal experience of the pandemic as a healthcare worker. I have a lot of apprehension about lifting mask mandates or any ability for further community transmission because of the way that I think so intensely impacts the health and well-being of the sort of area that I exist in. But I do see this, and it sounds like based on Councillor comment and the mayor's comments that it looks like this could be a way forward that's essentially a compromise, which I think is actually given this meeting and what we're talking about and the nature of the meeting thus far would actually be pretty wonderful. And I'm happy to support this amendment. I'm happy that we looks like we're moving towards a compromise. And I will support the amendment and support the underline as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Freeman. So we're still on the amendment to the amendment. Is there further discussion? Councilor Shannon.
Just note a small grammatical error. There should be an "or" before Jim.
Okay.
Hopefully that can be accepted as technical.
That's a technical correction. I'll allow that. Okay, any further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Are folks clear? Ready to vote? Okay. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Councillor Barlow.
Yes.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yes.
Councillor Jang.
Yes.
Councillor Freeman.
Yes.
Councillor Hanson.
Yes.
Councillor Hightower.
Yes.
Councillor Mason.
Yes.
Councillor Paul.
Yes.
Councillor McGee.
Yes.
Councillor Shannon.
Yes.
Councillor Stromberg.
Yes.
City Council President Tracy.
Yes.
12 ayes.
Okay, so now we are back to the amendment as amended. Further discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, are we ready to go to a vote? Okay, will the city clerk please call the roll?
Councillor Barlow.
Yes.
Councillor Carpenter.
Yes.
Councillor Jang.
Yes.
Councillor Freeman.
Yes.
Councillor Hanson.
Yes.
Councillor Hightower.
Yes.
Councillor Mason.
Yes.
Councillor Paul. Yes. Counselor McGee,
Yes.
Counselor Shannon,
Yes.
Counselor Stromberg,
Yes.
City Council President Tracy.
Yes.
12 ayes.
Okay, so the amendment as amended carries, and we are back to the underlying resolution now as amended. I have Councilor Mason in the queue to be followed by, Councilor Mason is passing, so I see Councilor Shannon to be followed by Councilor Jang.
I'm sorry, I had some notes that I'm trying to revive here. I guess I'll wing it. As I said in the beginning of this discussion, I've had some reservations about this resolution about having a mask mandate, and I say that as the person who I believe wrote the first mask mandate in the state back in May of 2020, and at that time got some resistance on the details from people around this table who were concerned about how some people in our community might be affected by a mask mandate. And I do think that taking aside kind of some behavioral issues tonight, there are people in our community still who have legitimate reservations about mask wearing and about a mask mandate. I have, in the process of determining what I would do tonight, I've tried to talk to as many people as I could. I have talked to a pathologist at the hospital. I've talked to an epidemiologist who practices on the international, throughout the world, but from Burlington. I have talked with Dr. Leahy, who is an ethics and infectious disease expert at the hospital. I listened in on the mayor's Facebook forum with Dr. Stephen Leffler, who's the president of the hospital. I have reached out to store clerks, masked and unmasked store clerks, and friends and community members. And I've been surprised actually how many people have urged me not to go forward with the mask mandate. And one of the biggest reasons was fear of backlash, fear that it would have the opposite effect of what we're trying to do. And I really hope that that is not the case. I thought it really interesting when I asked some store clerks who were not masked how they would feel about a mask mandate coming down. And they both enthusiastically said, yes, we are ready. And that kind of told me that there are people in our community who aren't masking because it's not required. And they kind of need that to help them get back in the mask, because honestly, it's not that much fun for any of us. We have changed the culture since that first mask mandate, and a lot of people, I think, kind of accept that we can either wear a mask or not wear a mask, and people are doing what they're comfortable with. The big thing for me that kind of pushed me to say this is what we need to do at this time is that the hospital, the folks at the hospital, are telling me that they are overwhelmed. And that, to me, is the ultimate measure of whether or not this is necessary. There's a lot of information that I think is, there's an overemphasis on the number of cases in the community. We have a lot of cases, and COVID isn't going anywhere. We're going to be living with COVID probably for the rest of our lives. And at some point, we're going to cross into a territory where we kind of accept this as it is endemic in our community. But what we have always been striving to achieve is we wanted to flatten the curve. We wanted to make sure that the hospital wasn't overwhelmed. And what I'm told is that the hospital is currently overwhelmed not only by COVID, but by other disease, as well as a staffing shortage. but COVID is a major contributor to why they're overwhelmed. And those dealing, not everyone at the hospital, but those dealing most closely with COVID were really clear that they need help from the community right now. And that's what this is offering. They were also really clear that vaccination, and I quote, is mammothly more important than masking. Masking in public places, I don't want people to think that that really makes you safe. Most of the COVID that people are getting, they're not picking it up in the supermarket or the retail store. They're picking it up at family events, at social gatherings, where they're still not required to wear masks, and we've never really been able to get people to wear masks in those environments, understandably. So when we're requiring masking in public places, we are hitting a small portion of it. What we're doing is we're stopping that chain, maybe, for if you're standing in line at the grocery store and everybody's wearing a mask, you're probably not passing COVID to that person you don't know in front of you, who may then go home to their elderly grandparent or have a relative who's unvaccinated. So you stop the chain right there. But that's not where most of this is coming from. And so I want to be mindful of that. This is not a panacea, and it's not something we can continue to do indefinitely. So I think that there may be some tweaks that we need to do down the road. I'm not going to make any amendments now, but ultimately I think rather than judging our success by community spread, I think we should be judging our success by hospitalization rates and working with the hospital to set some standards by which we can say when our hospitalization rate gets below this for COVID, then we can lift a mask mandate rather than having the community spread standard. And I did get positive feedback from the hospital on that point, but we can do that because we're reviewing this every 30 days and there may be other tweaks as well. So I thank the mayor for bringing this forward. And I thank everybody at this table for working together to come up with something that works.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. I have Councilor Jang.
Thank you, President Tracy. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Attorney Dan. And I think I completely agree that, the way we need to measure success is to box in this virus. And doing it, putting a mask is part of it. And I think as an elected official, people are right. No medical expertise, no legal expertise, and I want to talk to those two aspects. One aspect that we have heard here today from an expert in the medical field, very clear. When we are enduring a pandemic, we need to be proactive, and also we need to limit limitations. We limit them to the best of our abilities and be clear and consistent. Since this resolution came forward yesterday, automatically engaged my constituents, and it was clear. They want something that's simple, that's clear, and to me, the appendix, exception C, is not providing it. I'll be supporting this, but just because in 30 days we'll come back to the drawing table and reassess whether or not we've been successful or no. To the medical, legal side, I think we have to also pay a particular attention about what we are about to do. This language is very clear. We are going to request vaccination passports. The state did not ask us, did not ask municipalities to bring mandates about vaccination. The state was very specific and clear. Mask mandate inaction at the discretion of the municipalities, but we went beyond that. I don't want my city to be subject into legal battles here because there are people who are defensive. There are people who want to see their freedom of expression. So through that question, before I vote this, I want a reassurance from the city attorney knowing that this language, when we talk about vaccination cards, there are several types of vaccines that are available. What are we talking about? Are we legally safe to move forward with this language in front of us?
Thank you, Councilor Jang. Is there anyone else? I don't have anyone else in the queue. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's okay. I just understood his.
I'm sorry. I missed that. I apologize. Go ahead, Attorney Richardson.
So I understood from Councilor Jang the really two questions here. One is this exemption legal? And my opinion is yes. What the state legislature and governor have given the city of Burlington, all municipalities around Vermont, the authority to do is to create a mask mandate ordinance. They didn't give us the authority to create a vaccine mandate ordinance, but within the mask mandate, the way the exemption works is it works as an ability to exclude, and that is certainly fully within the power of the municipality to define how far they want to go with the mask mandate, what businesses they want to cover, and just as we've defined in here certain businesses that are covered by the mask mandate and certain businesses that are not, so we can create an exemption to it. And what we've done is create, I shouldn't say we, it's really the city that would be approving this would be allowing certain businesses to exempt themselves from the mandate if they follow this alternative process of the vaccine screening. No business is obligated to do it. Every business would be doing it under their own election and authority to do so. So in my opinion, we're on firm legal ground to do that. And in fact, businesses currently are screening, certain businesses in town are doing that. What we're simply doing is saying, if you are doing that or you elect to do it as a business, you will not be required to be covered by the mask mandate as well. The second question, as I understood, was about, what level of proof of vaccination. And the ordinance does not define what constitutes proof of vaccine. What's, I think, evolved is it leaves the businesses that choose to screen the option of what they choose to accept, which is, do they require the person to produce a vaccine card in person? Do they require, is a picture of their vaccine card sufficient? I think the ordinance leaves that to the businesses to determine, as opposed to mandating this is the type of screening we want you to do, because I think that might push us a little bit further into a legally gray area that might be open to the type of liability Councilor Jang has described. But this leaves it to the businesses themselves to determine what is an effective vaccine, proof of vaccination.
All set, Councilor Jang?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Are there others wishing to speak? Okay. Seeing none. Ready to go to a vote? No. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Councilor Barlow,
Yes.
Councilor Carpenter,
Yes.
Councilor Jang,
Yes.
Councilor Freeman,
Yes.
Councilor Hanson,
Yes.
Councilor Hightower,
Yes.
Councilor Mason,
Yes.
Councilor Paul,
Yes.
Councilor McGee,
Yes.
Councilor Shannon,
Yes.
Councilor Stromberg,
Yes.
City Council President Tracy.
Yes.
12 ayes.
The resolution as amended carries by a unanimous vote. That was our last item on the agenda, so a motion to adjourn is in order. Moved by Councilor Jang, seconded by Councilor Hanson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, we are adjourned at 7:48. Thank you.